Our February 9th, 2025 service at Red River Unitarian Universalist Church is based on a video from the UUA Sermon of the Month series. Wise Choices is presented by Reverend Dr. Elaine Strawn. Welcome from Red River Unitarian Universalist. Thank you for joining us. The religion we practice in this church is centered in the here and now, rather than the hereafter. It is more of a thinking kind of religion than a believing kind. It is governed more by reason than by tradition, more concerned with the present than the past. It is concerned with getting the most out of life, with living wisely and well. A major aim for us is continually expanding our understanding of life and ourselves. This church is a community of people who share in the free and open search for a level of understanding that will enable us to be more fully and effectively alive. The church does not tell us what we must believe. It stimulates us to think. It supports us in our search. You are welcome to join us. Our centering value is love, with transformation, generosity, equity, interdependence, justice, and pluralism. Come, gather, not into a common space sharing a physical closeness we long for, precluded by wise choices, but come, gather into this common time and this common space. We need to be together. We yearn for connection. We hunger for familiar faces of friends, the sound of shared voices proclaiming who we are, where we are going, that which resonates with our hopes, our dreams, and our values. Come, gather. We are here in this space, made of all spaces, and we share our becoming in this moment. As is our custom, if you'd like to come and light a candle for a joy, a challenge, or just to bring more light into this room, please do so while we sit in stillness listening to the prelude. Please rise in body or spirit for our chalice lighting and spoken affirmation. Our chalice lighting words this morning are by Elaine Strawn, and it's called Chalice Lighting. Drawing from the fire within us, we remember that we are all one, and it is this fire collectively which fuels our chalice. Together, we send light into the world. Join me as together we remind ourselves of our affirmation that is the cornerstone of the free faith tradition. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in freedom, and to help one another. We light this peace candle to remind us of all the places in the world where there is no peace. Join me in the words now on the screen. Lead me from death to life, from falsehood to truth. Lead me from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead me from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts, our world, our universe. You may be seated. Our opening thought is called The Great Turning. It was slightly adapted for this morning service, and it was written originally by Christine Fry. You've asked me to tell you of the Great Turning, of how we saved the world from disaster. The answer is both simple and complex. We turned. For hundreds of years, we had turned away as life on earth grew more precarious. We turned away from the homeless men on the streets, the stench from the river, the children orphaned in Iraq, the mothers dying of AIDS in Africa. We turned away because that was what we had been taught, to turn away from our pain and from the hurt in another's eyes, from the drunken father and from the friend betrayed. Always we were told in actions louder than words to turn away, turn away. And so we became a lonely people caught up in a world, moving too quickly, too mindlessly towards its own demise, until it seemed as if there was no safe place to turn, no place inside or out that did not remind us of fear or terror, despair and loss, anger and grief. Yet on one of those days, someone did turn to face the pain, turn to face the stranger, turn to look at the smoldering world and the hatred seething in too many eyes, turn to face himself, herself, themselves. And then another turned, and another, and another. And as they wept, they took each other's hands until whole groups of people were turning, young and old, gay and straight, people of all colors, all nations, all religions, turning not only to the pain and hurt, but to beauty, gratitude, and love. Turning to one another with forgiveness and a longing for peace in their hearts. At first, the turning made people dizzy, even silly. There were people standing to the side, gawking, criticizing, trying to knock the turners down. But the people kept getting up, kept helping one another to their feet. Their laughter and their kindness brought others into that turning circle until even the naysayers began to smile and sway. As the people turned, they began to spin, reweaving the web of life, mending the shocking tears, knitting it back together with the colors of the earth, sewing on tiny mirrors so the beauty of each person, each creature, each plant, each life might be seen and respected. And as the people turned, as they spun like the earth through the universe, the web wrapped around them like a soft baby blanket, making it clear they were loved and nothing separate. As this by love reached into every crack and crevice, the people began to wake and wonder, to breathe and give thanks, to celebrate together. And so the world was saved. But only as long as you too, sweet one, remember to turn. Join now for our time of practices with words, stillness, and music. Our words are from The Spirit of All Blessing by Maureen Killeran. Spirit of all blessing, be with us in the ordinariness of our days. May hope's light guard us and keep cynicism from our hearts. May the energy of laughter build endurance for the dark times of our lives. May creativity's vision grant the possibility of seeing old relationships with new eyes. May the oil of healing keep us from anger's hardness or despair. May the mantle of humility give courage to admit when we are wrong. May compassion's loom weave in us the discipline to forgive. May patience help us bear in mind that ours is not the only scale of time. May the flame of justice be a beacon for the choices we must make. May peace be ever in us and sustain our stressful days. Spirit of all blessing, be with us in the ordinariness of our days. Please join me in a moment of silence. For our first reading this morning, the words are Choosing to Connect by Priscilla Shumway. Priscilla begins with a quote from Scout Cloud Lee. We acknowledge that all life is sacred and that each act is an act of choice and therefore sacred. When life is a sacred dance lived consciously each moment, when we live at this level, we participate in the creation of a better world. Every Sunday morning, my husband and I rise early and head off to volunteer at the local food bank. The food bank is supported by people from 28 different congregations, including our Unitarian Church. After we set up, volunteers gather as our director reads a Bible passage and a prayer. As a UU and an atheist, these prayers initially caused me great discomfort. As I stood listening, all I heard were the things that I did not agree with. But by focusing on the things I disagreed with, I created a sense of separation, of judgment between me and all the others. Over 2 years, as my relationship with the other volunteers and the mission of the outreach has deepened, there has been a change in my relationship to these prayers. Now, during the prayer, I hear the segments or the sentiments I agree with rather than those I disagree with. I agree that we all give of our time, our talent, and treasure to do this work. That the work we do is important in the lives of our clients. That we who volunteer feel called to do this work. But who or what is calling us? This is where the prayers and I diverge. The prayers suggest we are called to do this work because God directs our life and calls us to it. But as an atheist, I feel called to do this work because of my belief that with every act and choice I make, I can create a better world. While I may have little control over the larger world, I can help create a better world in my own neighborhood, one client, one connection at a time. Now, as I pray with my friends, I feel a deep sense of connection to them and the sacredness of this work we all feel called to do. I realize it is my actions and choices that determine my connection to others. Now it no longer matters to me who or what is calling each of us, only that we show up in love and faith to do the work of creating a better world. The affirmation that she shares is, may we continue to become more mindful of that which connects us rather than that which separates us. May we always remember that the acts and choices we make are sacred as we work to create a better world.
Good morning. This is Reverend Dr. Elaine Strawn, and I'm happy to be with you this morning. I want to start our time together by reading from Learning to Fall, The Blessings of an Imperfect Life, written by Philip Simmons. We must understand what we can and learn to dwell richly in the mystery of what we cannot. I turn to religion in particular because it is with religious language that human beings have most consistently, rigorously, and powerfully explored the harrowing business of rescuing joy from heartbreak. Life is both more and less than we hoped for, both more comic and tragic than we know. Comedy ends in happiness, while tragedy ends in wisdom. We want, I suppose, to be happily wise and wisely happy. Only then can we know the full blessing of our imperfect lives. Wise choices. It seems there are a lot of choices to be made right now in the world in which we find ourselves. What do I stand for? What do I really believe? How closely do I hold our principles and our shared values as Unitarian Universalists? How deeply do I believe in them? They're certainly interesting times. My late father-in-law used to remind the family very often that he would bless us with these interesting times, borrowing that from the Chinese proverb. And these certainly are interesting times in which to be alive that take all the resources and the brain power and the emotional intelligence and the physical stability that we possibly can have. It's a divisive time in some ways. There are also many, many people coming together with new ideas, new hopes, new resources. Both of those things are operating at the same time. There's an old Girl Scouts of America song whose title is Looking Wider, and look wider still. Elder Marshall reminds us in the story for Time for All Ages this morning that if we walk together well, we will learn to see with both eyes. That's a skill that we need to have. I've learned a little bit about that as the news has basically driven me almost beyond the bend. And one of those sources is Fix the News, which has brought to us a podcast called Hope is a Verb. I love that phrase. And one of those episodes featured two women, Peta and Marwa. Peta is an Israeli who founded Women Wage Peace. And Marwa is a Palestinian who founded Women of the Sun. And for 10 years, they've been working on peace. They've been working together. They have brought those groups together to try to speak to each of their governments for what they want, for peace. These two peoples that have been siblings for ages and generations, coming together in peace, marching in the streets, encouraging people to speak out, trying to get the powers that be to listen to the possibilities. How often have we all found ourselves in that place? And we need to continue. I've also started listening almost news backwards, in that listening to statisticians who can put together history, recent history, in a way that looks at what is really happening as opposed to what is the immediate reality. And one of those people, historian and statistician from the Netherlands, Rutger Bregman, wrote a book, Humankind. And he came out from his analysis, he came out with 5 things. The first thing is that people are basically decent. We want to help one another. When a house is on fire, who's the first person there? It's usually a neighbor, a bystander. It could be a stranger. And the fire department and the emergency folks get there. But it's usually the first person is a neighbor. We are basically decent and want to help one another survive. We are also friendly. We have evolved, he has learned, to be friendly. Because without cooperation, without listening, We can't build things. We can't build cathedrals. We can't build universities. We can't build grand ideas. We get along. The third one follows closely, and that's that we're basically nonviolent. That even though Hollywood likes to point us in the direction of the monsters that we all are, that studies from battlefields show ammunition left in guns, soldiers having a very difficult time shooting. And when they do, the trauma that comes from that is so severe. Basically, we are nonviolent. The fourth one is, you know this, we usually get what we assume. If we walk into a meeting expected to be bored, or to a sermon expected to be bored, we probably will be. But if we're listening with all of our attention, if we're present in all of our being, with a sense of hope and openness, we will probably be very richly rewarded. And finally, he says, let yourself be scammed once in a while. He asks the audience when he speaks, how many people have never been scammed? And usually it's only 2 or 3. And he says to them, you need to go see a psychotherapist. You're not trusting enough. Because in life, and think about your life, how many times have you offered help? And how many times have you been scammed? He says, predominant evidence indicates that we really can afford to trust one another. We can afford to do that. We are basically decent. So I finish the book and I sit back once again and say, what is it that I really believe about people and about our strength? What do I really believe about the possibilities of justice and transformation? And do I really believe in the inherent worth and dignity of all? And sometimes I doubt. Most of the time, I can bring myself back. Joanna Macy is famous for so many things, but one of the things is her great turning ideals. And she talks about the bardo that we're in, that concept borrowed from Tibetan Buddhism, about being in the in-between times, being in the not yet arrived, being in the what's going to happen next section, and that's very, very hard. And it takes a lot of courage. And it takes a lot of wisdom. And that's where we find ourselves. So she looks at reality in 3 ways. Business as usual, status quo, just go about your business and whatever happens, happens. The second one is the great unraveling. Oi, it is all falling apart. What can I do? This is the end. And the third one, the great turning. That we deeply take an inventory of what's going on in the world around us and how life-sustaining is it, and where it isn't, how can we contribute our resources of time and gifts and energy to creating new ways that are indeed life-sustaining for all of nature, not just human beings, but for Mother Earth herself. That's where we are to be. And this is what she writes. When we dare to face the cruel social and ecological realities we've been accustomed to, courage is born, and powers within us are liberated to reimagine and even perhaps one day to rebuild the world. That's what we've always been about. That's been our history. May that continue to be our history as we go farther. We have so many sources from which to learn, so many people, so many folks who have weathered the storm that's been awful, and they keep on going. The dismissed voices among us that have so much to teach us. The disenfranchised peoples and the truths that they hold. Wisdom abounds. Again, as Elder Marshall says, if we walk together well, we will learn to see with two eyes. Deborah Eden Tull, writes in her book, Relational Mindfulness, imagine if, as young people, our parents had sat us down and said to us, quote, "We welcome you to this incredible and sobering journey called life. In this lifetime, you're going to experience more love and beauty than you could possibly imagine. And you will also experience more pain and suffering than you think you can bear. Given this reality, let us prepare you with much awareness, wisdom, courage, resilience, and self-compassion, as you're going to need it for this journey. You will experience all of it. So let us prepare you with the ability to see clearly and listen deeply as you navigate this journey called life. You will have what it takes to meet whatever life brings you. Your unique contribution matters here, and you're not alone. Imagine a world that generation of young people could create, and I think are creating. What kind of a world would you like to create? Start with your own family, your own neighborhood, your own friendship network, and move on and get bigger. Where do you see the links? Where do you see the common interests, the common commitments, the common joy? And keep building as we go. Get as specific as possible. You are paving a highway of hope, and at the same time, you're paving a highway of reality, of possibility in the neural pathways in your brain. Wouldn't it be great if we had 8-lane neural pathways of realistic hope and wisdom to enter into the great turning? Finally, nature is a great teacher for me. Dandelions teach me a lot. They're not my best friends, I think, but Robin Wall Kimmerer reminds us that dandelions both will feed us with great nutrition, and their roots will break up clay and make the ground more open to seeds and planting. Dandelions, those little flowers with a hollow stem, put forth a plant that can crawl up through almost any kind of concrete we put down. That is strength. And that's one of the things that nature has to teach me. Practice. Practice what you could create. This being human is not an easy assignment. I'm not sure it was meant to be. Find a practice that helps you into wholeness. Mine is Tai Chi, with balance and agility, deep breathing and centering. Find something that can center you, that can welcome in your mind, your emotions, your soul, your body, all of you, to give you strength, compassion, and wisdom. Take a deep breath and feel your power, feel your existence. Acknowledge in gratitude who you are and the gifts that you have to share. And then walk into the next moment together. Blessed be, and amen.
It is time for our giving. Remember that every offering is a Share the Bowl offering, where undesignated cash is given to the charities we support. The bowl awaits, or you may donate online.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one.
In closing, I invite you to rise in body or spirit for the closing thought and extinguishing the chalice. Our closing thought is by V. Elaine Strawn, and the people looked up. And the people looked up. In the sky east of the Mississippi, there was a brilliant light. And in that brilliant light were blue flames and red flames and yellow flames and white hot flames, lighting up the sky with a tremendous light. And holding up that flame were hands, old hands, young hands, black hands and white hands, and red hands and yellow hands. And they took turns holding so none were burned by the flame. And that light rested over our community here, and the people saw it. And on the next day, the people went to work and mowed their lawns and marched for justice and cared for the babies. And their schedules weren't any different. But somehow that light gave them hope, and their days were a little lighter. People of this beloved community, we have a task this week. We will hold up the flame together, and we will challenge and feed and care for each other so deeply that when this week is done, that flame will not disperse and go out. That flame will burn on in all the towns we bless with our courage and compassion. Blessed be and amen. Please join me in saying the words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish these flames, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace, return in love.